Hey guys, how's it going? TJ here with Dead History, and I'm here today with Henry.
Hello.
And we're doing our next Vice Presidential Series installment, and we're taking a look at what number, Henry?
28th Vice President of the United States, Thomas R. Marshall.
All right, you got it. The 28th Vice President of the United States, Thomas R. Marshall. Some cool things to tell you about Marshall, but first, before we get into our 28th Vice President, Henry, what do the people have to do?
Hit subscribe down below, leave all your comments, questions, hit the thumbs up and drop a like.
There you go. Hit subscribe down below, leave all those comments and questions, we love those. Give us a like and a thumbs up. And you almost forget, they gotta hit the what?
Little bell.
The little notification bell, so they can be notified when we do release a new video. And Henry, when is it?
Every single week.
It's every single week. He's absolutely correct. So here we go. Next Vice Presidential Series installment, the 28th Vice President of the United States, Thomas R. Marshall. And this is
Dead History.
Dead History. Hey guys, TJ back with you, here with Henry. Not gonna say hello?
Hello.
You're just sitting here like a statue. Say hi to the people. So today, we're doing the next Vice Presidential Series installment. The man behind us, the 28th Vice President of the United States, Thomas R. Marshall. And some cool things to tell you, he was actually the Vice President under, which president, Henry?
Woodrow Wilson.
You're right, Woodrow Wilson, he's right, for both terms. Both of Wilson's terms, Thomas R. Marshall was his vice president. Cool things to tell you are, Thomas R. Marshall, when he found out he was nominated to become, or at least to be, hopefully become, the Vice President of the United States, he actually traveled and visited Woodrow Wilson. Where, Henry? Do you have any idea?
No.
Where are we?
New Jersey.
Here in New Jersey, that's right. There was an old, it was called like the Little White House. It was like a governor's like summer cottage, summer house. We're going to tell you all about it, but right here in Seagirt, New Jersey, Woodrow Wilson was there, and Thomas R. Marshall came. So Marshall actually was only about maybe 25 minutes from where we are right now, here in New Jersey at one point. Pretty cool stuff. Mm-hmm. He's also the third vice president to be buried at the Crown Hill Cemetery in Indianapolis, Indiana. Yeah, that cemetery that's huge and has all those people and a few vice presidents. He's the third one there. Another thing that's actually not so cool, not so funny, is Thomas R. Marshall actually was an alcoholic. And we're going to tell you all about that, how he battled with alcoholism. We're going to explain it all to you and get into that too. A very funny guy who liked to joke around a lot, Thomas R. Marshall. We're going to tell you all these wonderful things and, unfortunately, the not-so-wonderful things like we do with everyone here at Dead History, right?
Yep.
That's right. So here we go. They did the likes. They did the subscribes. They did the comments and questions. What else do they... what do they got to go get now, Henry?
You get the potato chips, the soda, the popcorn, the pretzels, whatever you want to snack.
Whatever you want to snack on, right? Any of that stuff. Go get the drinks and the snacks so you can sit and watch our next Vice Presidential Series installment, the 28th Vice President of the United States, the man behind us. What's his name?
Thomas R. Marshall.
Thomas R. Marshall. Sit back, relax,
and enjoy.
Hey guys, welcome. TJ here with Dead History, and welcome to our next Vice Presidential Series installment as we're taking a look at the 28th Vice President of the United States, Thomas Riley Marshall. That's right, Thomas R. Marshall is our next installment here. Before I get into Thomas R. Marshall, just a couple quick things. I wanted to bring up the fact that we will be having some really, really interesting live streams coming up. We have a very cool live stream coming up in March. It's actually going to be on, to give you guys a little bit of a precursor hint, it's going to be on March 15th, Tuesday, March 15th. I'm not going to announce exactly what it is yet. You'll have to wait for the announcement, but there will be a live stream on this channel on March 15th. Then in April, we're going to be doing our second round, basically, of presidential trivia. But this time, it's not just going to be presidential trivia. It's basically going to be U.S. American history trivia. So it can be presidents, vice presidents, declaration signers, Revolutionary War period, Civil War, you name it. It's just going to be all U.S. history that we're going to cover in our next presidential trivia, or maybe Dead History Trivia Night, we will call it. That'll be in April sometime. And then in May, we have some really amazing live streams coming up. When the Vice Presidential Series is over, which will be sometime in early May, we will complete it. I am going to, in May, have at least 2 different live streams. One with Thomas Balcerski, where him and I are going to be grading each vice president. Yes, just like we did with the presidents. We're going to be giving them a grade based on their accomplishments and all that sort of thing. And then I'm also going to be doing a vice presidential gravesite grading with Kurt Dion of Kurt'sHistoricSites.com. We're going to be doing that as well. So lots of cool live streams and things coming up for this channel. Really excited about it over the next few months. So, and one more little, thing I wanted to mention. I've mentioned this in the past. As you guys are probably used to, if you've watched my videos before, you know that when I bring up or mention someone's name that is not actually the subject of our video, just somebody's name that was in Congress or a senator or a congressperson or whatever it may be, I always usually put a picture, if I can find one, of them up on the screen with their name. Now, I don't do that all the time because either A, I can't find a picture of that person. That does happen from time to time. Or B, it's because I've already in past episodes shown pictures of that person popping up on the screen several times. Somebody like, trying to think of somebody off the top of my head. Somebody like, I can't even think of anyone right now, to be honest with you. But it does happen. There you go. How about William Jennings Bryan? That's one, the presidential candidate many times. I've shown his picture popping up on the screen probably 3 or 4 times, probably even more than that if you count the presidential series as well. So I'm not going to always show that person's photo popping up on the screen because it just becomes a little repetitious and redundant. So I'm not going to be doing that with everyone multiple times in multiple videos. So if you ever see that, it's because I couldn't find a photo of that person, one doesn't exist that I know of or anyone knows of, or it's because I've already covered that person many, many times. So hope you guys understand. Just wanted to clarify that because I did get a question about that again recently from a subscriber. So with all that being said, live streams, little housekeeping note, whatever it may be, here we go. Let's jump right in to our next Vice Presidential Series installment, taking a look at the 28th Vice President of the United States, Thomas R. Marshall. Here we go. Thomas R. Marshall. It has not been the practice for presidents to throw away any of the burdens of their office upon the vice president. He rules the dignified and at times irascible Senate and reflects upon the inactive character of his job. He has an automobile provided for him, but has to buy his own tires, gasoline, and supplies. Washington Evening Star, March 2nd of 1913. Vice President Thomas R. Marshall, who served 2 terms with President Woodrow Wilson from 1913 to 1921, claimed that most of the nameless, unremembered jobs assigned to him had been concocted essentially to keep vice presidents from doing any harm to their administrations. One of these chores, according to Marshall, was that of regent of the Smithsonian Institution. The vice president recalled that at his first board meeting, the other regents, including the Chief Justice of the United States and the inventor Alexander Graham Bell, discussed funding an expedition to Guatemala to excavate for traces of prehistoric man. With the breezy manner of a self-described light-hearted Hoosier, Marshall asked if the Smithsonian had ever considered excavating in Washington, D.C. Judging from the specimens walking about on the street, he said, they would not have to dig far below the Capitol to discover prehistoric man. And then the utter uselessness and frivolity of the vice presidency was disclosed, Marshall confessed, for not a man smiled. It was a year before I had courage to open my mouth again. This typically self-deprecating story revealed much about Marshall's lamentable vice presidency. His feelings of inadequacy in both himself and the position he held were reflected again in his reaction to an invitation from President Wilson to attend cabinet meetings. Vice President Marshall stopped going after a single session. When asked why, he replied that he realized he would not be listened to and hence would be unable to make any contribution. Marshall similarly attended only one meeting of the Senate Democratic Caucus. I do not blame proud parents for wishing that their sons might be President of the United States, he later said. But if I sought a blessing for a boy, I would not pray that he become Vice President. Similarly, isn't it amazing how there's certain words, at least with myself, that are the most, common words. We use them, I don't know how often, but that I just get tongue-tied on. Similarly is one of them. I have no idea why. So I apologize for my marble mouth there. Continuing on. Woodrow Wilson, a supremely self-confident intellectual, regarded Marshall as a small caliber man and had not wanted him on his ticket in 1912. During their 8 years together, Wilson undoubtedly made Marshall feel uncomfortable. The editor, William Allen White, once described presenting a proposal to Wilson at the White House. Wilson parried and countered quickly as one who had heard the argument. I would present and was punctiliously impatient. He presented another aspect of the case and outtalked me, agreeing in nothing. I could not tell how much he assimilated. For a more insecure man like Marshall, such a response must have been excruciating. Convinced that the president and other high-ranking officials did not take him seriously enough to listen to him, Marshall learned not to speak, not to attend meetings, and not to offer suggestions. He became the epitome of the vice president as non-entity. But this condition moved from comedy to tragedy when President Wilson suffered a paralytic stroke in 1919. Faced with the crises of having to determine whether the president was able to fulfill the duties of his office, Marshall failed miserably. A man of contradictions. Thomas Riley Marshall had been little known outside his hometown of Columbia City, Indiana, before he was elected governor in 1908. Born in Indiana on March 14th of 1854, he was the only child of a country doctor and his sickly wife. After moving to Illinois and Kansas for Mrs. Marshall's health, the family returned to Indiana, where Thomas attended Wabash College. I don't know if it's Wabash or Wabash College. From his youth, he intended to become a lawyer and spent many of his Saturdays in the courtroom listening to such prominent Indiana lawyers, politicians as Benjamin Harrison, Thomas Hendricks, and Daniel Voorhees, who became president, vice president, and senator, respectively. Marshall read law and went into practice in Columbia City. In his early years, he was a hard-drinking man who wanted a barrel, not a drink. His intemperance persisted for years, and he often appeared hungover in court. A seemingly confirmed bachelor, he lived with his mother until her death. Shortly thereafter, however, at the age of 41, he married Lois Kimsey, a deputy in the office of her father, the county clerk in nearby Angola, Indiana. After several difficult years, his wife persuaded him to stop drinking, and after 1898, he never touched another alcoholic beverage. Marshall's biographer, Charles M. Thomas, summarized the contradictions of his subject's personality. He was, prior to 1898, a most pronounced drinker and at the same time a leader in the church and a temperance lecturer. He was inconsistent, yet he was trusted. He was a fundamentalist in religion, yet not sectarian, that is, not intolerant. He was enjoyed as the biggest wit in town, yet his judgment was respected by those who knew him, and his leadership was accepted. His later political career proves that, despite his conflicting traits, there was something in his character which made men like him. Marshall was a pretty heavy drinker. Literally, he was pretty much an alcoholic. Just to kind of give you a little bit here, more about that. About the same time, and this is kind of skipping something, but it's talking about his law practice in Columbia City in 1880, how Thomas Marshall in 1880 ran for public office for the first time as the Democratic candidate for his district's prosecuting attorney. The district was a Republican stronghold, and he was defeated. And about the same time as this, he met and began to court Kate Hooper, and the two became engaged to marry. Kate died of an illness in 1882, one day before they were to be wed. Her death was a major emotional blow to Thomas R. Marshall, leading him to become an alcoholic. So, there you go. And I'm going to get into his alcoholism even more here in a little bit. An Indiana Democrat. Marshall came from a traditionally Democratic family who traced their political roots back to the age of Andrew Jackson. Marshall himself was always a regular party man. In 1876, he became secretary of the Democratic County Convention and spoke for many Democratic candidates. In 1880, he lost an election for prosecuting attorney. For years, that defeat dissuaded him from campaigning for office. Although he became a member of the Democratic State Central Committee, he did not run again until 1908, when he sought the Democratic nomination for governor. When the front-running candidates eliminated each other from the race, Marshall won the nomination. He campaigned against Republican Representative James Sonny Jim Watson, who would later become Senate Majority Leader. Marshall was elected governor that year, even though in the presidential election, Republican William Howard Taft carried Indiana against William Jennings Bryan, whose vice presidential candidate, John W. Kern, was a Hoosier. It was the first time that Indiana Democrats had won the governorship since 1896. The boss of the Indiana Democratic Party at that time was the Irish-born Thomas Taggart, owner of a nationally famous hotel, health resort, and gambling casino at French Lick, Indiana. French Lick, Indiana, for any of you sports fans out there, that is where Larry Bird is from. Better known as the nickname of the Hick from French Lick. So, there you go. Any of you basketball fans out there, Larry Bird, French Lick, Indiana. And moving on. After William Jennings Bryan's two unsuccessful campaigns for president in 1896 and 1900, Tom Taggart had helped the anti-Bryan Democrats and regular machine organizations to nominate the more conservative Judge Alton B. Parker for president in 1904. Taggart managed Parker's campaign as Democratic Party national chairman. Bryan recaptured the Democratic nomination in 1908, but Taggart, a national committeeman, had enough influence in the party to ensure the choice of Indiana's John Worth Kern for vice president. In 1912, Taggart went to the Democratic Convention with similar plans to recognize Indiana Democrats by winning the second spot for the governor, who could not succeed himself in the State House. A conventional, middle-of-the-road politician, Marshall as governor had been neither in Taggart's pocket nor much identified with his party's more progressive wing. But Indiana was a pivotal state carried by every winning presidential candidate since 1880. Moreover, having Marshall on the national ticket would help state Democrats elect the machine's new candidate for governor. Tom Taggart disliked New Jersey Governor Woodrow Wilson, whom progressive Democrats were supporting. Instead, Taggart hoped for the nomination of House Speaker Champ Clark. But the party boss was shrewd enough to keep Indiana's 29 votes united for Marshall as their favorite son until he could determine how to use them to the best advantage. The Democratic Convention required a 2/3 vote to nominate a presidential candidate. On the first ballot, Clark had 440 delegates to Wilson's 324. Despite his majority of votes, Clark peaked on the 10th ballot. On the 14th ballot, William Jennings Bryan endorsed Wilson. Sensing the way the wind was blowing, Taggart on the 28th ballot gave all of Marshall's delegates to Wilson, who went on to win the nomination on the 46th ballot. Wilson would have preferred Alabama Representative Oscar W. Underwood for vice president. But when Underwood declined, Taggart clinched the nomination for Governor Marshall. As for Marshall, he had hoped that the front-running Wilson and Clark would eliminate each other, giving him the presidential nomination as the dark horse candidate. When awarded the vice presidential nomination instead, Marshall's first inclination was to decline on the ground that the job did not pay enough. But Mrs. Marshall had always wanted to go to Washington, and her tears of disappointment convinced him to change his mind and accept. In a multi-candidate race, the Democratic ticket won with 435 electoral votes to 88 for Theodore Roosevelt's Bull Moose ticket and only a meager 8 for Republican William Howard Taft. Just to read a little bit more from another source here about Marshall. Lawyer, politician, governor of Indiana from 1909 to 1913, one of 6 two-term vice presidents, popular speaker, and raconteur, Thomas Riley Marshall is best known for a quip that became part of American political culture. What this country needs is a really good 5-cent cigar. A smoker whose personality contrasted sharply with that of President Woodrow Wilson's, Marshall very likely uttered these words while presiding over the U.S. Senate during the 63rd Congress. However, the statement cannot be found in the congressional record or any other authoritative source close to the event. Marshall's principal biographer, Charles M. Thomas, concluded that the remark was an aside heard by a Senate clerk and others during a long speech by Senator Joseph L. Bristow of Kansas about the country's needs. In his 1970 doctoral dissertation, John E. Brown presented this and other explanations of Marshall's famous utterance. Marshall deserves to be remembered for more than his humor, which is amply documented in his recollections and elsewhere. Before he arrived on the national scene, Marshall was an effective lawyer and progressive governor of Indiana who sought to adjust the machinery of state government to the 20th century. The 1912 election that brought Wilson and Marshall to Washington proved to be the national high watermark for progressivism. Marshall played a role in the progressive agenda of Wilson's first term. Then, when war engulfed Europe, he presided over debates in the Senate about American entry into World War I, and subsequently over bitter debates about the country's participation in the League of Nations. President Wilson's stroke tested Marshall, who had ambitions beyond the vice presidency. A lesser man might have thrown the country into constitutional turmoil. Instead, Marshall used the vice presidency to stabilize the executive branch and to calm the nation. Operating without precedent during a president's incapacitation, Marshall conducted affairs of state with dignity. A wise and kindly man who deserves the designation statesman. Born in North Manchester, Indiana, 30 miles west of Fort Wayne, on March 14th of 1854, Marshall was a third-generation Hoosier whose paternal grandfather, Riley Marshall, came from Virginia in 1817. Whether the latter belonged to the first families, the second families was just well spoken of, or was downright white trash, the vice president could not determine. He thought he might be the only Marshall who does not trace his origin to the great Chief Justice. The family had owned slaves in the Old Dominion and had manumitted them, but a great uncle managed to take some of the blacks to Missouri before they knew they were free. On the eve of the Civil War, that relative owned a plantation and 300 slaves. At this point in his recollections, Marshall inserted, "God does not pay at the end of every week, but he pays." Hardworking people, the Indiana Marshalls made the most of their opportunities. Daniel, Thomas's father, became a country doctor. The vice president's maternal ancestors, Pennsylvanians who came to Indiana via Ohio, were Presbyterians. "That does not necessarily make a good man," he quipped, "but it makes a religious one." In the Indiana setting, it also tended to make a political man. Thomas and an older sister who did not survive infancy were the only children born to Daniel and Martha Patterson Marshall. Because of vast swamps, malaria was the bane of Northeast Indiana in the 1850s. Marshall spun a yarn in which heredity, environment, and malaria explained why he became a Democrat. A man of domineering character and predatory wealth lived in town. When summer came and malaria seized the townspeople, that man took sick with third-day ague. He was an aristocrat. The rest of us shook every other day. We were Democrats. In the Marshall household, each day began with a Presbyterian prayer that began in Indiana and ended in China. Thereafter, we had a teaspoonful of quinine, and then we had breakfast. I think it's actually quinine. Thomas admired and respected his parents, both of whom valued learning. One chapter of his Recollections is a tribute to the country doctor, advisor, counselor, friend, personified by his father, a staunch Democrat and minor office holder. The loving son asserted, "I could be elected to any office if I could rehabilitate the old family physician." Thomas believed that he received his sunny disposition from his mother, with whom he lived, except when attending college, until he was 40. During Thomas's early years, Martha Marshall was sickly. Coupled with Dr. Marshall's understanding of medical geography, this explains several family moves. When Thomas was 2, the family went west by covered wagon to the prairies near Urbana, Illinois, to try the open-air treatment for Martha's tuberculosis. In the fall of 1858, Dr. Marshall, a Stephen Douglas Democrat, took his son to a political debate at Freeport. A suggestive memory led Thomas to believe that he sat on Lincoln's lap while Douglas was talking, and on Douglas's lap while Lincoln was talking. Although the youthful Marshall liked the tall man, it pleased the aged raconteur to think that something of the love of Lincoln and of Douglas for the Union, the Constitution, and the rights of the common man flowed into my childish veins. Again, for health reasons, the Marshalls moved to Kansas, but stayed only long enough to conclude that it was a dark and bloody ground. Next, the family went to LaGrange, Missouri, across the Mississippi from Quincy, Illinois, where Martha's health was restored. Late in October of 1860, Dr. Marshall, a Unionist, got into a street altercation with a pro-slavery guerrilla leader. Relatives convinced the doctor that his life was in danger unless he left Missouri immediately. Thomas and his parents saw the sun go down from the stern of the evening boat for Quincy. Back in Indiana by November, the month Abraham Lincoln was elected President of the United States, the family took up residence at Pierceton, between Warsaw and North Manchester. Here, Thomas went to public school for 6 years. He attended 7th and 8th grades in Warsaw, where an uncle, Woodson Marshall, practiced law and spent the 1868-1869 academic year in high school at Fort Wayne. A fellow student remembered Thomas as very bright. Sectionalism, Civil War, and the legacy that followed colored Thomas's world. Even as vice president, he saw his role as soother and pacificator, but not always as compromiser. After but 1 year of high school, Thomas went to Wabash College, operated by the Presbyterian Church in Crawfordsville, Indiana. The Marshalls were active in that denomination, and Martha hoped that her son would become a Presbyterian minister. Thomas thrived at Wabash College, and his personality developed, but not in the direction of the ministry. He studied classical Greek and Latin, modern French and German, mathematics, a cluster of critical thinking courses, science, religion, military drill, and the Constitution of the U.S. On a 9-point scale, his lowest college grade was 8.5. In 14 of his 37 classes, he received the highest possible grade. Fraternities, literary societies, political activities, and the Geyser, a student newspaper, offered diversion from the curriculum of the all-male college. A Phi Gamma Delta fraternity member, Marshall actively participated in campus life. Fellow students had confidence in him, particularly when trouble threatened, as it did during Marshall's senior year. Thomas wrote an article that defamed the character of a female lecturer and visitor to Crawfordsville and published it in the Geyser. She hired Lew Wallace, Civil War general and Crawfordsville novelist, as her attorney and filed a $20,000 libel suit against Marshall and the Geyser staff. Marshall went to Indianapolis and engaged the services of another Civil War general, Benjamin Harrison, destined also to become president of the U.S. Harrison extricated the boys from their predicament, charged nothing, and then gave them a stern lecture on ethics. It was a great lesson to me, Marshall recorded 52 years later, and I have never again been sued for either slander or libel. Through this episode and by visiting courthouses and witnessing trials, the bright young student met leading members of the Indiana bar. So, yeah, just a little more. Thomas Marshall's paternal grandfather, Riley Marshall, I said all that, immigrated to Indiana. He became wealthy when a moderate deposit of oil and natural gas was discovered on his farm. When he sold the property in 1827, it earned $25,000. A lot of money back then. The money allowed him to purchase a modest estate and spend the rest of his life as an active member of the Indiana Democratic Party, serving as an Indiana state senator, party chairman, and financial contributor. He was only able to send his only child, Daniel, to medical school. That's obviously Thomas's father. Marshall's mother, Martha Patterson, was orphaned at age 13 while living in Ohio and moved to Indiana to live with her sister on a farm near the Marshall's home. Martha was known for her wit and humor, as her son later would be. Martha and Daniel met and married in 1848. Thomas Riley Marshall was born in North Manchester, Indiana, March 14, 1854. 2 years later, a sister was born, but she did die in infancy. Martha, his mom, had contracted tuberculosis, which Daniel believed to be the cause of their infant daughter's poor health. While Thomas Marshall was still a young boy, his family moved several times, searching a good climate for Daniel to attempt different outdoor cures for Martha. We know that. Family moved to Kansas. We know all that. Then they moved back. It was October of 1860. Several men led by Duff Green demanded that Daniel Marshall provide medical assistance to the pro-slavery faction, but he refused and the men left. When the Marshall's neighbors warned that Green was planning to return and murder them, the family quickly packed their belongings and escaped by steamboat to Illinois. That was the whole Bleeding Kansas incidents and all that stuff that was going on. Kind of touched on that, so they left. So they settled in Pierceton, Indiana. Marshall began attending public school. His father and grandfather became embroiled in a dispute with their Methodist minister when they refused to vote Republican in the 1862 election. The minister threatened to expel them from the church, to which Marshall's grandfather replied that he would take his risk on hell, but not the Republican Party. The dispute prompted the family to move again to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and convert to the Presbyterian Church. In Fort Wayne, Thomas Marshall attended high school. At age 15, his parents sent him to Wabash College. We got all that. 1827, she hired a lawyer, Lou Ellis, the girl with the slander and the libel. Her lawyer, Lou Wallace, was the author of Ben-Hur. Didn't know that. Marshall traveled to Indianapolis. He found the defense lawyer, of course, Benjamin Harrison. Very, very cool. I think that's pretty much it as far as that goes. Just trying to see here if there's anything else I want to touch on real quick. At Wabash College, Marshall learned to reason quickly and keenly and to speak and write well. Valuable skills that he would soon put to use. Thomas's Greek professor tried to persuade him to take up that occupation, but by his senior year, he had made his mind to become a lawyer. He graduated with honors in June of 1873, elected to Phi Beta Kappa. Rather than attend law school, which the family could not afford, Thomas, on the advice of members of the bar, decided to work and study law in the Warsaw law office of his uncle, Woodson Marshall. Why he soon left is not clear. But the chronological time period there of his departure coincided with his parents' move to Columbia City, midway between Warsaw and Fort Wayne. Before 1873 was out, Thomas Marshall was preparing himself for the bar in the offices of Hooper and Olds in Columbia City. Walter Olds took to the bench, opened offices in Fort Wayne, and eventually became a judge of the Indiana Supreme Court. Therefore, accounts asserting that Marshall studied for the bar under a Fort Wayne judge do not conflict with the facts. Marshall was admitted to practice before the Whitley County Circuit Court at age 21. Wabash and Erie Canal and several railroads had opened north-central Indiana to development well before Marshall came to Columbia City. In his day, the wetlands were being ditched, tiled, and drained. A girl of the nearby Limberlost Swamp, writer Jean Stratton Porter, viewed draining from a nature lover's perspective. Farmers regarded it as physical labor. Marshall came to see the gumboot era of Whitley County development from a lawyer's perspective. Draining projects required legal arrangements, hydraulic engineering, capital, and loans. The aftermath of the Panic of 1873 brought mortgage foreclosures, collection cases, and litigation involving farmers, bankers, and merchants. Life was becoming complicated even in the countryside. Frustrated men attempted to solve their problems with their fists. It was a dull Saturday if Marshall did not get a half dozen assault and battery cases. And as a young lawyer, he eked out an existence trying them before the justice of the peace. In time, Thomas Marshall's practice diversified and became profitable, but he never specialized in any particular aspect of the law. He liked the county seat town of 300 inhabitants. According to his biographer, ditch diggers, local bankers, town sots, ministers of the gospel, small-town lawyers, and later diplomats and kings accepted him as a friend. Here was a man who understood them and their problems. Marshall's matchless humor relieved tense situations and made him good company. By the close of the 1870s, he and his partner, William F. McNagny, were involved with nearby half the cases before the local circuit court. During the 1880s, the influence of Marshall and McNagny spread throughout the 12th Congressional District of Northeast Indiana. And although Marshall also had other partners for shorter durations, his affiliation with McNagny lasted from 1877 until 1909. In his recollections, Marshall discussed some of his cases as well as insights he received into the twistings and turnings of human nature while practicing law in Indiana. With tongue-in-cheek, he claimed that he could tell whether a witness was telling the truth by watching his Adam's apple. In a 1913 speech to George Washington Law School students in Washington, D.C., Marshall offered his legal 10 commandments, which a reporter paraphrased as follows: don't put a fee before a just cause, don't worship money to the extent of being willing to write a dishonest contract in order to get a large fee, be a peacemaker, that is the lawyer's business, don't chase ambulances, honor your profession as your own sacred honor, therefore do not seek or confound litigation, don't accept contingent fees, use your influence against the system of allowing attorney's fees in advance of divorce cases. When that has been abolished, half the divorce cases will be stopped. Use your influence to compel a person charged with crime to testify in the cause. The innocent man cannot be harmed thereby. Take the part of the known criminal, but only to see that justice is tempered with mercy. Don't inquire as to your client's pocketbook before fixing your fee. Knowledge of the law and of men could be valuable in politics. Marshall and McNagny, both Democrats, worked for the well-being of their party. As their legal reputation spread, so did their influence in Democratic circles. In a day when political activity doubled as entertainment, Marshall was in demand as a quick-witted speaker and Democratic torchbearer. In 1892, McNagny ran to represent the 12th District in the 53rd Congress. He won, but failed in his re-election attempt. William Jennings Bryan and Free Silver were not popular in Indiana in 1896, but Marshall hewed to the party line, one of the few Democratic State Central Committee members to do so. As Marshall approached 40, he appeared to be successful. He had a good law practice and held the respect of many Hoosiers. On Sundays, he attended both morning and evening services at the Presbyterian Church. He had taught Sunday school, served on the school board, organized the county fair 2 years in succession, and gave generously to charities. A Masonic Lodge member, he climbed the grades of the Scottish Rite through the 33rd degree by 1898. His oratory, at its best in banquet halls and temple dedications, brought resounding applause and more speaking engagements. But Marshall's genial exterior and gregarious personality masked heartaches. Moreover, he drank too much. Well, I found a special guest. Hello, Henry.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good.
So Henry chiming in as he likes to do sometimes. Henry, we're taking a look, of course, at our 28th Vice President. Who's our 28th Vice President? You remember?
No. ThomasRMarshall.
There you go. ThomasRMarshall. Good job, dude. So what do you think? Pretty interesting guy or what?
Yes.
Not bad, right? And when he became vice president, or when he got the nomination for vice president, where did he visit and come to?
New Jersey?
That's right. You're right. New Jersey. We're going to tell the people all about that in some bonus footage. So, all right, Henry. Well, thanks for stopping in. Thanks for saying hi to us. And, yeah, we'll see you either next week or the week after, right?
Yep.
All right. Bye, Henry.
Bye.
So, a little bit more here just about his law practice. You know, Columbia City, took on minor cases, gaining prominence with William F. McNagny as a partner, all this stuff. Let me just try to see here. Marshall's alcoholism. Let me just see. Yep. Marshall's alcoholism had begun to interfere with his busy life before his marriage. He arrived at court hungover on several occasions and was unable to keep his addiction secret in his small hometown. His wife helped him to overcome his drinking problem and give up liquor after she locked him in their home for 2 weeks to undergo a treatment regimen. Thereafter, he became active in temperance organizations and delivered several speeches about the dangers of liquor. Although he had stopped drinking, his past alcoholism was later raised by opponents during his gubernatorial election campaign. So that's a little bit about that. During his early years in Columbia City, Marshall had asked Catherine Hooper, daughter of a partner in the law firm of Hooper and Olds, to marry him. She consented but died soon after buying her trousseau. For the next 2 decades, Marshall kept the company of several women, but did not fall in love with any of them. He lived with his mother. Friends reached the conclusion that he was a confirmed bachelor. While trying a case in Angola, few months after his mother's death, Marshall met Lois I. Kimsey, a vivacious 23-year-old deputy county clerk, and married her on October 2nd of 1895. Marshall adored her and dedicated his recollections to 2 women, uninjured in the fall of Eden, his mother and his wife. Lois Kimsley Marshall helped her husband gain the upper hand over his alcoholism. This did not come easily. By his own account, he never cared for a drink of whiskey. He wanted a barrel. By 1897, according to his biographer, Marshall began to appear in morning court sessions with after effects of intoxication, which made it impossible for him to conduct his business. Marshall's drinking threatened his marriage until in 1898 he took the cure. He continued to struggle with alcoholism, but thereafter no one saw him drink alcohol in public. "I do not drink," he replied when tempted at political gatherings. When Marshall was governor and then vice president, he and his wife did not serve liquor in their home. It is unlikely that Marshall would have been successful in Indiana and national politics without a loving wife's encouragement and without Thomas Taggart's influence. As mayor of Indianapolis from 1895 to 1901, and a wheelhorse in the Democratic Party on the state and national levels, Taggart had an eye for political talent. Marshall had served with Taggart on the Democratic State Central Committee beginning in 1896. When the party faithful talked with Marshall about doing his duty and running for Congress in 1906, he declined on grounds that he might be elected, and then hinted that the only elective office that interested him was the governorship. Republicans had held that office for a decade, but a friend, Lewis Ludlow, began to tout Marshall as the Democratic candidate for governor a full year before the 1908 gubernatorial election. The liquor issue then divided Indiana Republicans and Democrats alike. At the Democratic State Convention in March of 1908, Taggart's candidate, Samuel M. Ralston, could not muster enough votes in 4 ballots to carry the convention. To prevent the nomination from going to a temperance candidate, Taggart maneuvered enough votes to Marshall so that he won the nomination on the 5th ballot. Several factions then rallied to Marshall's call for party unity. Marshall's Wabash College and Masonic connections raised interest beyond the Democratic Party. So too did his speaking style and adept handling of the liquor issue when he began a campaign. To assure his independence, Marshall paid his own campaign expenses. Neither a dry nor controlled by the brewers, he favored local option. He also supported such progressive planks in his party's platform as direct election of U.S. senators, primary election laws, tariff reform, and control of trusts. Republican opponent Congressman James E. Watson bogged down when the incumbent governor called a special session of the legislature in September to consider the liquor issue. The Republican majority passed a county option law, whereupon Marshall pilloried the opposition for taking the decision away from the people in the fall election. Marshall campaigned hard in 1908, using his homespun approach to good effect. Neither formidable in appearance nor particularly handsome, he was friendly and approachable. Well-trimmed gray locks covered his large head, and a bushy mustache obscured his mouth, into which he frequently stuffed a cigar. Observant reporters noted that he was well-groomed, that he wore a Phi Beta Kappa key, and that a dash of whimsy flavored his otherwise dignified appearance. Marshall delivered his points deliberately, as if addressing a jury, reported the Indianapolis News of June 3rd of 1908. The whole people seemed to be in a jury box before him. People liked the man, his progressive message, and the way he delivered it. In the November election, Marshall won a 4-year term as governor with a plurality of nearly 15,000 votes. More Hoosiers voted for him in 1908 than for Bryan, the perennial Democratic candidate for president. Marshall also came within 150 votes of outpolling the Republican candidate for president, William Howard Taft. Gubernatorial victories then being rare for Democrats, Marshall's success commanded national attention. 2 years later, another progressive Democrat, Woodrow Wilson, would be elected governor of New Jersey. In office, Marshall distanced himself from the machinery of his party and refused to take orders from party boss Thomas Taggart. As his 4-year term unfolded, Marshall proved to be a sound administrator who wielded the powers of his office decisively, including the veto and the use of the militia during labor disputes. He understood the citizens he governed, as evidenced by his words and deeds. So this pretty much leads us up to his vice presidency. I'm going to touch a little bit more on his governorship in part 2, because part 1's getting a little long here. Part 2 will probably be about the same, about an hour long. But there is some bonus footage here at the end of part 1 that I do want to save a little bit of time for. So, I'm going to end part 1 here. We'll touch a little bit more on his time as governor tomorrow, and then cover his vice presidency, his death, his burial, his gravesite, all that stuff in part 2 tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. And also stay tuned for bonus footage here in part 1. Some interesting stuff that I definitely want you guys to take a look at. So there you go. That is the early life, education, time as lawyer, and then, rise into politics of our 28th Vice President of the United States, Thomas Riley Marshall, Thomas R. Marshall. I hope you enjoyed this part 1. And like I said, stay tuned for part 2 tomorrow. And as always, thank you guys for everything. The support. Keep all the comments and questions coming. The subscribes, you name it. Thank you so much for it all. Hope you enjoyed part 1. Stay tuned now. Tomorrow, part 2. See you then, guys. Bye-bye. Hey guys, how's it going? TJ here with Dead History. I'm actually outside the gates of, this is the New Jersey National Guard. I'm going to flip you guys around because I want to show you something and kind of explain what the heck it is that I'm doing here. So, as I said, this is, sorry about the sun, it's just a bad time of the day. So, if you guys see down here, this whole fence line, this is the New Jersey National Guard. It's like a training center. So you get a real good view of it here. You see this picnic area right there. See where it's like it's got kind of an awning, like a pavilion, and it's a picnic area. So I spoke to the New Jersey National Militia, there's a museum. I'm losing my train of thought as I walk. There's a New Jersey National Guard Militia Museum. You can actually see right here. See, State of New Jersey National Guard Training Center. So right behind here, there is, right where my finger is, there's a picnic table. So, and then there's like a little like deck here. Back out there, that's Stockton Lake and the ocean. Now the National Guard Museum is right over there, the Militia Museum. It's right down that road. It's actually that building right there. Kind of see my finger pointing to it. So now there's a gate, a National Guard gate. You can see the little hut down there, the gate down there in the middle of the road. So that's the gate to enter the facility. Of course, I can't because I'm a civilian. I don't have clearance to do so. But supposedly, according to the person that I spoke to, the curator at the Militia Museum, this picnic area, ooh, can I focus? Perfect, I can. So that picnic area right there is the location of where the home was that Woodrow Wilson used to summer at. The house stood right there, the little white house. I was told that it's right to the left of the entrance gate, which of course is that little gate I showed you down there. I was told that the picnic area is where the home once stood. So right there, where that picnic area is where Thomas Marshall once came and met up with Woodrow Wilson after he found out he was nominated to possibly become Vice President of the United States. So, or he found out when he won when they won the election. I'm not sure if it's when they won or if it's when he found out that he was nominated to be on the ticket. But either way, the story goes that Marshall visited Woodrow Wilson right here in New Jersey. This is in Seagirt, New Jersey. So right here in Seagirt, that is supposedly where it was, right there. So right here in front of me, let's see if I can get an even better little view for you guys. There you go. So right there, that picnic area, so right in this general vicinity here is where the house once stood, at least what I was told. So there you go, guys. Pretty cool stuff. So yeah, I just talked to a security guard, actually. He told me that, yep, right in this general vicinity is where it was. So the house stood right here somewhere. Whether it was exactly where, the picnic area is, or whether it was like maybe right here, it was in this general vicinity right here is where the house stood. And this is where Wilson 100% was notified of his nomination in 1912. So it was in 1912. He was notified of his nomination here. And I believe, obviously, that this is where Marshall visited him. So pretty cool stuff. A lot of history right here, guys. A lot of history. So there you go. Right in this general area. As I was told and as I've learned by some research, right in this general area is where the house stood that Marshall visited Wilson at. Very cool. Hey guys, how's it going? TJ here with Dead History, of course. So, I wanted to show you guys this. So this is kind of a bird's eye view, as you can see. So this right here, as I zoom in, that is That's the militia where my mouse is. That's the militia museum that I spoke of. And that right there where my mouse is, that's the little gate for the National Guard of New Jersey grounds entrance. So now where I was located taking the video and the pictures is right here along this grass, this fence. So right here where my mouse is, that's the picnic pavilion. And then there was that platform there. Take a look here at the street view. Not really going to see much else, but so there you go. That's, down there, that's the, the guard station. This is the militia museum right in here. Okay, just to give you an idea. If I go right over here. So, okay, this is all where I was. There's that sign. Let me get back down here a little bit. Whoop. Okay, so there you go. So there's the sign. There's the picnic pavilion. Okay. There's the platform that I showed you guys. So basically what it comes down to is the house stood somewhere right in here. Whether it was like right exactly where this pavilion was, whether it was over here where this platform is, whether it was more, on the corner. As you can see, this is where I was. I parked over here and I was walking over here. So this is where it was for sure. Coming back out. So anywhere over here is where it was. In this general vicinity, you see my mouse here in the middle of the screen. Anywhere in this general vicinity is where the house was. The Woodrow Wilson summer house, that is where Wilson, obviously got the notification of his nomination in 1912, all that stuff. So that is 100% where it was. Nobody knows exactly where. I'm actually going to read you guys the exact information that I got, just to give you guys kind of an idea. So the exact information I got was that the Militia Museum does have photos of Wilson and of his summer home. So they have, this museum here has photos of Wilson and the home that used to be there. You're actually seeing the home on your screen now, probably. But that is where he was notified in 1912 of his nomination. They don't have any photos, though, of ThomasRMarshall, however, at the home. The house stood on the left where you enter the post. It is now a picnic ground. That is what the Militia Museum curator told me. So this is where you enter the post. That's the picnic ground on the left. That's where it stood, and a security guard also told me that today. The building, the house was torn down in 1972, from what I was told. Also, it was originally the New Jersey exhibit building at the Chicago World's Fair and was taken down and shipped to Seagirt, New Jersey to serve as a summer house for the governor of New Jersey. So there you go. That's kind of a history of the house. Now, if you're looking, I don't want to go, whoa, I'm going way too far now. Sorry about that, guys. So if you kind of turn it, so I was along here. Now, if you look out, right up here, this is Stockton Lake. Stockton Lake, as you see, is a big, huge lake. This is all the grounds of New Jersey State Police Academy and the New Jersey National Guard. They have all this. None of this is publicly accessible. Now, if you look, the house was down here. See where the National Guard Museum is? And right out here, all this to the left, that's the Atlantic Ocean. So it sat right on the beach, right on the shore. Here's the ground. You see here where my mouse is toward the left here. This whole grassy grounds, that's the grounds for the National Guard and the state police. That's Stockton Lake right above it, and there's the ocean. So as we zoom back in, you can see the house, which was located here, was very close to the ocean. So very cool. So that's probably where it was. Not probably, pretty definite. That's where it was. I'll try a little further down on the street view for you guys. There you go. So there you go. There's that picnic pavilion. So it was right in here somewhere. Who knows? It could have been Thomas Marshall and Woodrow Wilson could have been walking and hanging out right here. So who knows? Pretty cool stuff. So there you go, guys. Just wanted to show you kind of that bird's eye view, give you an idea of exactly where the house was right in here. Thanks so much, guys.